and welcome to Candidates Up Front. This is a public interest election program brought to you by Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. I'm Judith Cranus, a member of the League. On November 8th, we have our general election, and we'll be voting for state and federal officials. The deadline to register to vote in this election is October 24th, but don't wait that long. Do it now. The League is going to be interviewing candidates, those who wanted to be interviewed, in all the contested races. And for each race, the candidates will get the same basic questions and will have the same amount of time to answer them. Two candidates are competing in the 9th Congressional District, Democrat Amanda Waldman and Republican Dan Muser. Now, this district is in northern and western sections of Berks County. That includes everything from Womelsdorf, Wernersville, Robisonia, the Heidelberg Townships, Center and Perry Townships, Burnville, and all the way up to the northern border of Berks. But it goes beyond that. It also includes Lebanon County, part of Luzerne, Columbia, Montour, Northumberland, Schuylkill, eastern Lycoming, Sullivan, Susquehanna, and Wyoming counties. Goes all the way up to the northern border of the state. Now, the U.S. House of Representatives is what we're talking about, poses and passes federal laws which must also be approved by the U.S. Senate. They act on domestic and international issues. They serve 2-year terms and earned $174,000 per year, plus benefits and expenses. And I will remind you that the opinions expressed in the interview are those of the candidate, not necessarily those of BCTV or the League of Women Voters. Now, today's interview is with Amanda Waldman. Welcome, Ms. Waldman. And
thank you for having me.
Please tell us, our viewers, about yourself and why you are running.
So I'm Amanda Waldman. I grew up in Lycoming County. I bought the home that my parents built. It's on the remainder of my family's farm. Actually, there is no farm part of that left. It is mostly a development now. I decided to run in 2020 for a state house seat. I was unsuccessful in that bid. That district happens to be 70-75% Republican versus Democrat. And I ran then for the same reasons I'm running now. I want to see change for my neighbors. I want to see all of our voices lifted. And the vast majority of my neighbors are Republicans. I was not raised to judge a person based on a political party. I wasn't raised to judge anyone on any basis. I was raised to care about my neighbors, to help wherever I could. And in 2020, I thought, if not me, then who? My neighbors need politicians. They need representatives who will listen to all of them, who will take their concerns and their kitchen table issues and their struggles seriously and act in their best interest and know the difference between your own opinion and what the people around you need. I have opinions. I have personal beliefs, but my own opinions and my personal beliefs do not dictate what my constituents need. I'm a regular full-time working mom. I'm a single working mom. My kitchen table issues match those of my neighbors. When gas prices went through the roof, it was, how am I going to afford gas? When my children are younger, how was I going to afford daycare? How many jobs do I need to pick up? Can I get more hours at my part-time job? How will I, how do I find babysitters if I take on extra hours? Things like that my neighbors all struggled with. A lot of my neighbors are currently farmers. There are still quite a few small farms here.
And we do need to move on to our questions, or we won't get them all
environment and crops and all of that. So that's why I'm running.
Okay, you've chosen the Democrat Party. What draws you to that party? And we have to limit you to about 30 seconds on this.
I'm actually registered as a Democrat because my grandfather was a Democrat. And I remember his reaction to the 1980 election.
Oh.
And what kept me in the party is that this party seems to be focused on humanitarianism, on the human aspect of our lives and how to raise people up and allow them to survive on their own hard work, how to thrive, I guess is more the word, not just survive.
Is there anything about your party that you're not comfortable with?
In general, I'm not comfortable with politicians. My goal is to never become the dreaded P word. I'm sure in years past, that was a good thing to be a politician, something your parents wanted you to do. I don't ever want to be considered a politician, especially with the innuendo around it now. I'm not entirely thrilled with my party for allowing the appearance to go on that we had walked away from rural areas. And I'm not entirely enthused about the way we message in the clouds. We have this ideal and we talk about things here instead of real issues every day.
In Congress, your party will want you to vote the party line. People who voted for you will want you to vote their view. People who did not vote for you will still expect you to represent them, and you will have your own ideas. How will you balance these expectations? Tell us your thinking process.
So the motto of my campaign is unbossed and unapologetic, because I am not purchased by corporate interests. I am not purchased by a party. I'm not purchased by politicians, lobbyists, special interests. I won't be bossed by them either. The only bosses I have are going to be my constituents, and I am very aware that we all have very different opinions. But what we're lacking now in real representation is honest, factual truth about each issue, about each bill. And we don't have open discussions with the constituents in every county. I have 12 counties. I plan on having town hall meetings in person and virtual, having the option to join it virtually. And I'll answer every question. I'm not going to vet you to see what party you are. I know that my responsibility is to act in everyone's best interest, and that's what my thinking process is.
What is important to you in foreign policy?
Ensuring world peace, ensuring there's no nuclear fallout, there's no nuclear war. We're playing a dangerous game, and we have been for a long time. What we've lost sight of is the fact that everyone in each of these countries, we're all human. We're each other's neighbors. And I'll go back to, how I was raised. I wasn't raised to judge anyone based on anything. I was taught to always love and respect and lift up the people around me. And in a role in Congress at the federal level, that means I'm lifting up the lives of people in other countries as well, because they are also human. And a little more understanding, a little more kindness, a little less anger and warmongering, I think would go a long way.
Okay. Everyone that I know is pro-life, but they all mean different things by it. Ending gun violence, obviously pro-life. Preventing climate change. Protecting endangered species. You can be against abortion because you're pro-life. You can be in favor of women's choice in abortion because you are pro the mother's life. Universal health care. Ending the death penalty. All those people see themselves in some way as pro-life. On which of these or other issues do you consider yourself pro-life?
So I am pro-life of everyone. When the term pro-life is used in connection with women's health care, that is not pro-life, that is pro-controlling another human being. It is not pro-life to take a woman's decision away from her. It is not pro-life to just create mandatory birthers. That is what the pro-life stance with abortion is. It's not protecting lives. In developed countries, the United States has the highest rate of maternal and infant death. This is not going to lower those numbers. This is not addressing necessary health care. This is actually criminalizing abortions, or I'm sorry, not abortions, but miscarriages, partial miscarriages that require medical attention are no longer allowed in some states. The health and well-being of a mother, and it's not just the physical well-being. We have to take into consideration the mental well-being. So the pro-life stance on abortion is anything but pro-life. And it needs to change and be called pro-birth, because that's all it is. People that support pro-life don't seem to support making sure those children are taken care of, making sure they're not in awful foster care homes, making sure they're not abused and beaten, making sure they have enough to eat, making sure they get a good education, making sure all opportunities are open for them.
Thank you.
And all of the other aspects, I am pro-life on everything. I believe in everyone's right to live. But I do not believe that in our Constitution, where it talks about the general welfare, that forcing women to have children when maternal health care is so poor for a developed country has anything to do with being pro-life.
Well, you just led me right into the next question, which is about the fact that we're a first world nation with third world statistics as far as the death rates of pregnant women. And I'm not going to go through all the statistics, but it is 23.8 of each 100,000 pregnant women in the US died during or soon after pregnancy. And in New Zealand, Norway, fewer than 2. So we are way out of line. And you've already said that the next question was, should our federal government address this? And I think you've answered that. So let me go into the question of what do you suggest we do to get these numbers down? Some things that are out there, the Family Leave Act, funding for rural hospitals, because we know the women most at risk are Black women, brown women, followed by rural women. And if you're Black and rural, it's that double whammy. Should pregnant women get free health care? Should we have stipends so the waitress who can't work a shift because she has to be, on her feet and she can't be on her feet, should there be a stipend so she doesn't have to be? Tell us what your thoughts are.
So one of the other things that this country doesn't have is universal health care. So for a developed first world country, we do a pretty piss poor job of taking care of our people. Yes, I believe healthcare should be covered for pregnant women, for everyone. Healthcare is a right. As far as what the specific answers are, better training for doctors, more hospitals, stop making rural wastelands for healthcare. There are places in my northern counties, Susquehanna, Bradford, Wyoming, where for them to get to the nearest hospital is between 30 minutes and an hour. Can you imagine being in labor in a car trying to get that far? You can call 911, but where's the ambulance going to come from? All of the volunteer fire companies, because we don't have actual municipal ones. And what if there's no volunteers on call, no one able to answer that? So the rural hospital wasteland needs to stop. The for-profit hospitals, for-profit healthcare industry, that needs to be addressed. That is not helping anyone, especially pregnant women. Doctors are overworked. You have to see so many patients per hour. Our nursing staffs in hospitals are overworked. They're supposed to spend 15 minutes per patient in an hour. That should give them 4, 5 at the absolute most, which is, beyond 15 minutes each in a hospital on a floor. And some of our local hospitals, they're forced to carry 9, 10 patients an hour. How is that possible? How is that protecting life? How is that protecting the life of a mother or a child?
We're going to move on to gun violence, which at this moment is costing the U.S. economy $557 billion annually. And that includes outfitting and training first responders against new and improved weapons, retrofitting buildings to add security, and health care, which we were just talking about. 96% of gun violence-related health care is shouldered by Medicare and U.S. employers through their health insurance plans. It's an inflationary economic pressure. Should Congress act on this issue, and what do you feel Congress should do to decrease the cost of gun violence?
So I am a gun owner. Um, Again, born and raised on a farm, taught by my grandfather and my father how to hunt, how to shoot, how to take care of a weapon. I also, before I could go out hunting, I had to take a hunter safety course. Wasn't allowed to go out hunting without it. I don't have a problem with those regulations, and none of the hunters I knew had a problem sending their children to a hunter safety course either. Why is there so much pushback on simple regulations? The military, they can't have these AR-15s and semi-automatic weapons or automatic weapons. Those are weapons of war. They can't have those as a military member without taking specific training, without recertifying every year. And if you're under the age of 23 in the military, and it goes by rank, but under a certain rank that, typically members of the service will reach at the age around 23, they can't even keep their weapon in their own barracks. They get a receipt for where it's being held. They have to register. They have to check it in and turn it in every night when they go back to the barracks. Why are we letting 18-year-olds right out of high school own semi-automatic and automatic weapons? They can go and purchase themselves. They don't even have to tell their parents they own it. And then they walk in and they shoot up a school. I've already covered the healthcare. Mm-hmm. And in a rural area, thankfully, that mass shootings haven't been happening here in my rural area. But if it were and we didn't have a hospital within 30, 45 minutes, an hour, how many more lives are lost that could have been saved if we were in proximity to healthcare? We need to change the way we think in this country and stop putting profit over people. We need to stop putting politics and corporate interests over the best interests of the people.
If you were acting on legislation that would put this thing in training, and one of your constituents said, that infringes on my Second Amendment rights, in a heart-to-heart discussion, what would you say to that person?
I'm going to ask them, and I have asked this question, what part of well-regulated militia infringes on their right to own a weapon? Okay. The definition of well-regulated is the exact opposite of the complete and total absence of regulation.
All right, let's move on.
We have gun laws in this country. We definitely need to start putting money into the enforcement of the laws we already have in place. I'm not a huge supporter of just passing new laws when we haven't looked at what we have on the books and what's been working and what's not working. In our everyday daily life, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater every time we have a problem. We look at the issue, we find a solution, we build on what's existing.
Okay, let's move on then to the climate. Congress recently passed a bill to address climate change. It was not bipartisan. Wildfires, floods, droughts, they're expensive emergencies to deal with. And once the emergency is over, you have the expense of rebuilding. So again, this is an inflationary pressure on our economy. From a cost-benefit perspective, are we doing the right thing?
Are we doing the right thing by allowing the planet to burn or to flood in the extreme?
Well, a lot of people have said that
definitely that's not a good cost-benefit plan.
They say the plans to change are costly, and I'm just trying to compare the two.
Are they more costly than what's already happening? The wildfires that were started out west, it was the power company, their lines. Was it less costly for that company? I'm sure they'd have a difference of opinion. It baffles me that if the cost of something affects the bottom line of a corporation in this country, then it's entirely too expensive for us to implement. But if the cost is just simply in human lives or homes or things. We're just things here in this country. That doesn't matter. We're not the priority. And again, the priority in this country needs to change. We need to start looking at the people first, not corporations. We absolutely can afford to start we should have been doing already, is promoting green energy, bringing in green energy business. We should be a leader in technology in these green industries. And instead, we've just made it harder for them to compete in the US while we continue to promote fossil fuel industry, because there's way more money for politicians from the fossil fuel industry right now.
And there's my next question right there. Companies donate unregulated dollars to political causes as a form of protected free speech, and the public can't see these donations. Some say that fossil fuel company donations influenced legislators to vote no on the recent climate change bill. Do you think campaign contributions influence votes? And please tell us what you think about campaign finance laws.
I don't think that donations influence votes. I know they influence votes. People say that when people get elected, that the party pushes them and forces them to vote a certain way. I don't believe that. I believe what has happened is that this money from corporate interests has infiltrated everything in our government system. Everything. Can I single-handedly remove money? No. My plan, first thing I want to do and focus on is changing the rules of our committees. So our agricultural committees, foreign affairs, veterans affairs. The seats of the majority and minority in those committees are bought and paid for by corporate interests. And that is money we don't see. We don't know who paid for what or who paid for who. But good, bipartisan, beneficial legislation goes to a committee and is tabled and dies in that committee. I can name off, we have the PRO Act for unions, Prime Act for agriculture and farmers. The list goes on and on. The first step in removing some of that money is to make sure every piece of legislation that goes to a committee is returned to the floor of the House or the Senate.
Okay, I'm going to have to interrupt you because we have 4 more questions and 2 more minutes. So very quickly, 30 seconds, tell us your thoughts on the filibuster, please.
I love the original idea of the filibuster, that it was to promote debate, that you were to talk it out with your opponents, that you're to have this coming together, a meeting of the minds, so to speak. It is completely broken and is not used to promote debate. It is used to shut down debate. So the way I see it now, the parties are unwilling and unable to use it in the way it was meant to be used. So it's time to do away with it.
Tell us your thoughts on the Electoral College.
That's a joke. There's absolutely no way that the popular vote for a candidate in any position should not be the same as the Electoral College vote. There's no way an Electoral College vote should elect someone over the popular vote. This is a democracy and it's by the majority. So from coast to coast, sea to shining sea, we should be electing based on what the majority of the citizens want, not some skewed electoral voting system.
There's another voting question. And as critical as it is to American democracy, we know that different states have different laws. There's different value of your vote depending on how you're gerrymandered. Should there be federal standards that protect our vote no matter where we live?
Absolutely, 100%. I told you I ran in 2020 for a House district that at the time was 75% Republican. While the majority of the maps redrawn at the state level were good, there were quite a few of the rural counties that we were gerrymandered even worse than we had been previously. That does not enable, it doesn't lift up voters, it doesn't make us believe in a system that we can participate in. It discourages voter turnout. And when all you're concerned with is power and money, you don't care that the majority of people in your district don't feel empowered to participate in their own democracy.
Okay, we're going to move on quickly to inflation. We know that it's the Federal Reserve Bank that sets monetary policy and has the greatest influence. But should Congress consider the inflationary or deflationary aspects of a bill it considers? And if so, how far forward should we look?
We don't really ever look far forward. When we're passing spending bills and Build Back Better plan or the CHIPS Act, these are going to create jobs. It's going to lift people out of poverty. It further lowers unemployment. The biggest driver of inflation happens to be the price of gasoline. And you can see that in the ways that inflation have affected the economy. It's usually on the goods and services at our local stores, grocery stores, the cost of food in a grocery store. What a farmer is getting for their products based on how much they have to spend for gasoline for the tractor. The recent current crisis with inflation and gas prices, in 2020, President Trump actually made a deal, and this was a good thing. I'm not saying this in a negative way. He had to stabilize the oil market across the world, and he made a deal with OPEC nations and with the United States oil producers to decrease production by 20 million barrels per day of oil. That number and that production is still not back to the levels pre-COVID.
I hate to interrupt,
So
but for
if
you
we're
to
not
have,
producing, how are we supposed to lower prices?
in order for you to have a closing statement, we need to have that now, and we have about 15 seconds.
I'm so
15 seconds to make a closing statement?
a closing statement. I'm going to ask the people that are watching this to please look at the patterns of voting. Stop voting for a letter of the alphabet, and vote for someone who actually wants to see change. Someone who can look at you as a person and not a party. Someone who wants to listen and who wants to do the work that you need to have done. Consider voting for me. Ask yourself, what has the current elected official done for you? And if you look at his voting record and you look at every bill that he voted no against, you'll realize those bills would have helped you in your daily life. And I want to step forward and do the work that you need done.
Thank you so much, Ms. Walden, for sharing your views with us. Viewers, please remember there is another candidate for the 9th Congressional District, Dan Muser, and he had not scheduled an interview when we taped this one. To check your voting status, you can go to votepa.gov. You can register, locate your polling place, apply for an absentee ballot, and the deadline again is October 24th. The League has an online voter's guide, vote411.org, though you can confirm your new district and get more information on the candidates. Thank you for watching Candidates Up Front. I'm Judith Cranis. Good day.